I'd spent 8 years at the same company, so when my manager called me into his office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I expected another boring meeting about productivity charts. Instead, he handed me a folder, gave me an awkward smile, and informed me that the company was moving in a new direction. Apparently, that new direction didn't include me. 30 minutes later, I walked out carrying a cardboard box containing a coffee mug, 2 pens, and a stress ball shaped like a rocket ship. The stress ball felt especially insulting. Most people would have panicked. I almost laughed. The reason was simple. 6 months earlier, I'd won a lottery jackpot large enough to make my former salary look like spare change found between couch cushions. I'd kept the money secret from everyone, including my family. Life had continued normally. I still worked, still paid my bills, and still enjoyed pretending I was an ordinary guy. That evening I drove home expecting at least a little sympathy. Instead, I walked straight into a family emergency meeting. My parents sat at the dining table looking as if I'd personally destroyed the economy. "You lost your job?" my father asked. "Technically, yes." My mother gasped dramatically. "Oh no. This is exactly how it starts." "How it starts?" "Failure." I blinked. Pretty sure failure started several hours ago. Neither of them appreciated the joke. For the next 20 minutes they delivered a speech so dramatic it deserved its own soundtrack. According to them, unemployed adults immediately transformed into lazy couch creatures that survived entirely on snacks and bad decisions. "You need responsibility," my father declared. "I've had responsibility. You need consequences. I got fired. That feels like a consequence." My mother pointed toward the front door. "Then maybe it's time you learned to survive on your own." I stared at her. "Are you throwing me out?" Neither answered immediately. That was answer enough. Outside, the neighborhood curtains began moving. Karen. Of course Karen was watching. The woman treated local gossip like a professional sport. I could practically hear her narrating events from across the street. And there goes Kevin Parker. Recently unemployed. Apparently homeless. A strong contender for most disappointing son of the year. My father folded his arms. "You'll thank us one day." I nearly choked trying not to laugh. If he only knew. 6 months earlier, I'd been holding a lottery ticket worth more money than anyone in our neighborhood had ever seen. The jackpot had changed everything and absolutely nothing at the same time. I hadn't told anyone because money changed people. Friends became investors. Relatives became financial advisors. Strangers suddenly became your best friend. Keeping the secret had been the easiest decision of my life. Now it was becoming the funniest. I carried my suitcase to my car while my parents watched from the doorway. My mother looked convinced she was performing some heroic parenting sacrifice. My father looked proud. Karen looked thrilled. I tossed my luggage into the trunk, climbed behind the wheel, and waved cheerfully. Neither parent waved back. The moment I pulled away from the curb, I started laughing. Not because losing my job was funny. Not because being kicked out was funny. But because I knew exactly where I was going. 40 minutes later, the city lights disappeared behind me and the ocean stretched across the horizon beneath the setting sun. My destination stood on a private stretch of beach. 3 floors. Massive glass windows. Private deck. Infinity pool. A beachfront mansion I'd quietly purchased through a holding company months ago. My beach house. I parked, grabbed my suitcase, and walked inside. The living room alone was larger than my parents' entire house. Ocean waves rolled gently beyond the windows. For a moment, I simply stood there enjoying the silence. Then movement caught my attention. Outside, along the shoreline, a woman jogged across the sand. She wasn't human. Her silver-blue hair shimmered in the evening sunlight, and the small glowing patterns along her skin marked her as one of the alien residents from the nearby colony settlement. As she passed the property, she glanced toward the house. Our eyes met briefly. She smiled. I smiled back. Then she continued running down the beach. Interesting. Very interesting. I looked around my mansion, dropped my suitcase beside the couch, and stretched comfortably. Well, I said to the empty house, I've had worse Tuesdays. The ocean breeze drifted through the open windows as darkness settled across the coastline. Back in town, my parents were probably celebrating their tough love lesson. Meanwhile, I was standing inside a beachfront mansion worth millions, newly unemployed, secretly rich, and unexpectedly curious about a beautiful alien jogger. Life was looking pretty good. The following morning, I woke up to the sound of waves instead of my father's daily complaints about electricity bills. I walked onto the balcony holding a cup of coffee and stared at the ocean. Getting fired was turning out to be surprisingly relaxing. Without a job schedule controlling my life, I spent the next few days doing things I had never had time for. I swam in the ocean every morning. I ordered absurdly expensive food deliveries simply because I could. One afternoon I watched 3 action movies from a hot tub overlooking the beach while eating shrimp that probably cost more than my first car. Being secretly rich was fun. Being secretly rich while everyone thought I was broke was even funnier. Meanwhile, back in town, my parents had apparently become motivational speakers. I learned this through social media. Karen, the neighborhood gossip queen, had been spreading stories about me everywhere. According to her latest version, I'd been forced to survive in a tiny apartment, while desperately searching for work. The reality was slightly different. At that exact moment, I was floating in an infinity pool attached to a beachfront mansion. One afternoon while walking along the shoreline, I spotted the silver-haired alien woman again. This time she stopped. "You're the mysterious house owner," she said. "And you're the mysterious runner." She laughed. The sound was surprisingly warm. "My name is Luna. Kevin." Instead of leaving, she stayed. We talked while walking beside the water. Luna explained that she came from a nearby interstellar colony and operated several businesses that connected Earth and alien markets. I admitted that I had recently become unemployed. She looked confused. "You seem unusually cheerful for someone without employment." "Maybe I enjoy sleeping late. Humans are strange. That's actually one of our better qualities." She laughed again. Over the next several weeks, those beach walks became routine. Luna was intelligent, funny, and completely unpredictable. One evening she complimented my smile. I thanked her. She suddenly looked embarrassed. "In my culture, that is considered the second step of courtship." I nearly walked into the ocean. "The second step?" "Yes." "What's the first step?" "Making eye contact." I stared at her. "We accidentally completed that weeks ago." "Exactly." Her grin widened. "No wonder my grandmother keeps asking when the wedding is." I laughed so hard I almost fell over. Dating an alien was apparently more dangerous than expected. Another day I jokingly offered to buy her lunch. Luna nearly dropped her drink. "You would provide nourishment?" "It was a sandwich." "Still. Very romantic." "It was turkey. The most romantic turkey." Every conversation felt like a comedy routine. Despite the misunderstandings, I found myself looking forward to seeing her every day. The best part was that she had no idea I was wealthy. As far as she knew, I was simply a guy who had lost his job and spent his days walking on the beach. For the first time in months, I felt completely relaxed around someone. One evening we sat together watching the sunset paint the ocean orange and gold. Luna glanced at me curiously. "Can I ask something?" "Sure." "You lost your job. Yet you never seem worried." I looked toward the horizon. A dozen possible answers crossed my mind. Because I won millions. Because I own this beach house. Because I could retire tomorrow. Instead, I smiled. "Let's just say things are better than they appear." Luna studied me for several seconds. Then she smiled back. "You're hiding something." "Probably." "Something important?" "Definitely." To my surprise, she didn't push further. She simply leaned back in her chair and watched the waves. Whatever secret I was carrying, she seemed willing to wait until I was ready to share it. And somehow that made me like her even more. The peaceful routine lasted almost 2 months. Then Karen found a magazine. In hindsight, every disaster in my life seemed to begin with either bad luck or Karen. That morning I was sitting on the balcony enjoying breakfast when my phone started vibrating non-stop. Messages poured in from old coworkers, distant relatives, former classmates, and people I hadn't spoken to in years. At first I thought someone had died. Then I opened the first message. A photograph appeared on my screen. Specifically, a photograph of my face. Right there on the cover of a glossy local magazine. The headline read, "Top Young Millionaires Living on the Coast." I nearly dropped my coffee. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Apparently one of the investment firms handling part of my lottery winnings had provided information for a local business feature. Somehow a journalist had connected the dots. The article detailed everything. Lottery winner. Property investor. Owner of one of the most valuable beachfront properties in the region. My secret had officially exploded. Across town, Karen discovered the magazine approximately 12 seconds after it reached store shelves. The woman spread gossip faster than most communication satellites. By lunchtime the entire neighborhood knew. By dinner everyone was talking about it. My parents were among the last people to learn. Which somehow made it even funnier. According to several neighbors, my father was in the middle of another speech about responsibility when someone handed him the magazine. The story ended with him staring at the cover in complete silence. For nearly a minute. My mother reportedly thought it was fake. Then she read the article. Then she read it again. Then she apparently sat down because her legs stopped cooperating. I imagined both of them replaying recent memories. Throwing me out. Calling me irresponsible. Bragging about teaching me a lesson. Telling everyone I needed to learn independence. The realization must have hit like a meteor. Meanwhile, I was still deciding whether to laugh or hide. Luna found the situation hilarious. We were sitting in the living room when she finished reading the article. "You are wealthy. Looks that way. You own this entire property. Also true. You let me believe you were unemployed and struggling." "I was unemployed." She narrowed her eyes. "That is technically correct. The best kind of correct." Luna laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. A few hours later, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. I looked through the window and immediately recognized it. My parents. Right on schedule. My father stepped out first. My mother followed. Both looked like people arriving at a surprise exam they hadn't studied for. Luna glanced toward the driveway. "Should I be worried? Only if second-step courtship includes witnessing awkward family reunions." "Actually, it does." "Of course it does." A moment later the doorbell rang. I opened the front door. My parents froze. Not because of me. Because they were finally seeing the mansion. The enormous entrance hall. The ocean visible through the glass walls. The luxury furniture. Everything. My father looked around as though he had accidentally entered a royal palace. My mother simply stared. Then Luna appeared beside me. Her silver hair reflected the afternoon sunlight. My parents somehow looked even more shocked. Their unemployed son was apparently living in a beachfront mansion with a beautiful alien entrepreneur. This was not matching any version of reality they had prepared for. For several seconds nobody spoke. Finally my father cleared his throat. "Kevin." "Hi, Dad. We need to talk." I smiled politely. "Sure. Come inside." The expression on their faces was worth every second of secrecy. For the first time in months, my parents weren't treating me like a failure. They were looking at me like they had absolutely no idea who I was anymore. And somehow that was even funnier. The conversation began exactly the way I expected. Awkwardly. My parents sat on one side of the living room while Luna and I sat on the other. The ocean rolled quietly beyond the massive windows, creating a peaceful backdrop for what was rapidly becoming the most uncomfortable family meeting in history. My father cleared his throat. "Kevin, we may have acted too quickly." "Too quickly?" I asked. "You threw me out before dinner." My mother winced. That does sound bad when you say it out loud. That's because it was bad. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then my father attempted an explanation. We thought we were helping. By making me homeless? It sounded smarter in our heads. Luna immediately covered her mouth to stop herself from laughing. Unfortunately, she failed. My mother sighed. We honestly believed we were teaching you responsibility. I leaned back in my chair. I lost the job, not my ability to function as an adult. That finally broke through their defenses. For the first time, they stopped making excuses. My father looked down. You deserve better from us. My mother nodded. We judged you based on one bad day. The room became quiet. I could have spent hours reminding them how wrong they had been. Instead, I realized something important. The money wasn't the real issue. The mansion wasn't the issue. The lottery wasn't the issue. The problem was how quickly they had assumed I was a failure. I wasn't upset because you thought I was broke, I said. They listened carefully. I was upset because you believed losing one job defined my entire future. Neither of them had an answer for that. Because there wasn't one. Finally, my father stood and walked over to me. I'm sorry, son. My mother joined him. So am I. I looked at both of them for a moment before smiling. You're lucky I became rich. Otherwise I'd still be annoyed. My father laughed first. Then my mother. Soon all of us were laughing. The tension that had been building for months finally disappeared. Even Luna seemed relieved. Or at least she did until my mother turned toward her. So, Luna, what exactly do you do? Luna smiled innocently. I own several interstellar transportation companies. The room went silent. My father blinked. Several? 7, technically. My mother looked stunned. I looked at Luna. Wait. 7? She nodded. You never asked? Normal people don't casually own fleets of starships. That's fair. My father slowly sat back down. So let me understand this. He pointed at me. You're a millionaire. Then he pointed at Luna. And you're even wealthier. Luna nodded. Considerably. I stared at her. How wealthy are we talking? She thought for a moment. Then she mentioned a number. I nearly fell off the couch. My father nearly stopped breathing. My mother looked ready to faint. I pointed at Luna. You're telling me I've been buying lunch for someone who could purchase entire planets? Technically, yes. That's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me. Luna laughed and wrapped an arm around mine. I thought it was sweet. Later that evening we all walked outside to watch the sunset. The sky turned orange and gold while waves crashed gently against the shore. Luna leaned closer and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't complicated. It was simple and perfect. Unfortunately, my parents were standing 10 feet away watching the entire thing. My father immediately looked at the ocean. My mother suddenly became fascinated by a seagull. Neither knew where to look. I found that incredibly entertaining. Just when the evening couldn't get any better, another car pulled into the driveway. Everyone turned. Karen stepped out holding a magazine. Of course she did. She hurried toward us with the excitement of someone arriving at the season finale of her favorite show. Before she could speak, I smiled and pointed toward the property line. Karen, you're currently standing on private property. She froze. Private property? Mine, actually. For the first time in recorded history, Karen had nothing to say. She quietly turned around, got back into her car, and drove away. The entire family burst into laughter. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, I realized something. Losing my job had felt like a disaster. Getting thrown out had felt unfair. But both events had led me here. To a better life. To a family that finally understood me. And to an incredible woman who could apparently buy moons as a casual investment. Not bad for the guy everyone thought had ruined his future. Sometimes the people who underestimate you end up giving you the best punchline. And sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the beginning of the best one.